Bill Jasper here at the Salt Palace in Salt Lake City at the Red Pill Festival 2022. And a lot of very important things taking place here. And one of the people I wanted to interview is this young man here, Nathan Descheemaeker
Yep.
from Montana. And Nathan has been working on a very important series of projects concerning property rights, concerning the various efforts by state and federal agencies and NGOs to take over private property, particularly productive agricultural land in Montana. So tell us a little bit about the things that you're working on there.
Yeah. Well, one thing that we've been working on is an issue in the region, nonprofit foundation, American Prairie Reserve, 15 plus years ago, early thousands came into the region and started to buy up in holdings, private ranches around the Charles M. Russell Game Refuge, an already existing 1.1 million acre refuge. And the goal for them is to buy up all those in holdings surrounding that to create a 3.5 million acre bison reserve to bring back Lewis and Clark conditions the way it was when they initially came up through the region, which essentially means removing all human development, fencing, stock water reservoirs, and ultimately displacing the agricultural industry across a pretty good portion of 5 counties. A rewilding initiative would be another way you could put it, yeah.
Now, explain to them, because a lot of people who aren't familiar, what is an in-holding?
An in-holding is a situation where you have private land that is aggregated with parcels of state and federal lands surrounding it. A lot of the ranches in the region have what's called base properties, which is deeded land that are dependent commensurate properties that depend on those federal permits and leases to make those private lands viable in ag production. So there's long-standing statutory frameworks that protect the interests of those permittees and those cattle ranchers to have access to those resources on those BLM leases. And the American Prairie Reserve is going through a permitting process that is kind of a backdoor way to subvert those long-standing policy frameworks to protect those grazing interests, which are specifically structured around the domestic livestock industry, not wild bison to supplant that.
So we're right now in a situation all across the world, but here in the United States, where food security, food production is a very important, pressing thing, which most Americans have not had to deal with during their lifetimes. But it's becoming much more noticeable and acute. And so agriculture at all levels is really under serious pressure. And when you go to things like cattle production, particularly grazing in the western lands, which requires more land because you don't have the water and therefore the vegetation, so it takes more land. How is that impacting all of the agriculture, particularly those that are cattle ranching?
Yeah, well, it makes it difficult. I mean, we already have natural processes we have to deal with, drought, and we're going through a drought situation right now. A large amount of cattle have gone to market because the resource isn't available as much because of dry conditions at the moment. So those are issues we can get through those types of issues, and we have in the past. But you have a regulatory policy environment simultaneously that is destabilizing the regulatory framework, not only for the cattle industry, but for our energy sectors, which are mutually connected to the cattle industry, because everything we do to produce beef to market into the marketplace relies on cheap, affordable energy and fuel in particular to put up the hay we need, to pump the water for irrigation for our crops and our feed for our cattle, etc. So there's tremendous pressure in a policy framework, especially with the climate policy agenda, that is gonna more and more so impact our ability to be feasible in providing or generating food and fiber for the region, for the nation, as well as really the rest of the world as well.
Sure. When they talk about zero carbon, what does that mean when you're trying to get food to market, or you're trying to run a tractor or combine or something? if you have to go to zero carbon and you don't have diesel or fuel to operate on.
Yeah. Well, it's problematic. It doesn't make much sense. Everything we use comes from carbon. Clothes on our back to the food we eat, and a zero carbon economy doesn't make much sense to just totally subvert our carbon-based industries, which includes obviously our energy sectors. It makes it, like I said earlier, unfeasible or unsustainable, if you want to put it in the terms the UN likes to throw around. They're all about sustainability, but the policy frameworks coming down, both nationally and now internationally, because the climate policy agenda is touching on international scope with the Paris Accord and those international obligations for decarbonization. So it has a tremendous impact. And we see it, overseas in the Netherlands and Australia and other places where the ag industry is directly being attacked for methane emissions and nitrous oxide with manure and whatnot. And those are all natural byproducts that take place in natural processes. So it's kind of mind-boggling from a producer's standpoint that we even have to deal with that kind of thing.
Now, much of what you're facing is coming at you from two directions: from the governmental level there, from the federal government, Biden administration, state level, but also working, it seems, hand in hand with all these NGOs and environmental organizations, which are largely being funded out of state by major foundations and corporations.
Yeah.
So the average farmer, you're a rancher,
Yep.
there, generational rancher there. Doesn't seem like a very fair lineup of forces.
Yeah, like the American Prairie Reserve, for example, you have the WISE Foundation out of Switzerland and German billionaires, the Mars Foundation, pumping a lot of dollars into those processes. And that's the problem, is all landscape scale conservation initiatives blur jurisdictional boundaries of both states and county governments. So we've been really focusing on equipping our county commissioners and local governments to engage in these processes with our federal and state counterparts so that our local people and constituency on the ground that actually live there are being represented, rather than some outside special interest group coming in with, like you said, multi-billion dollars available to push these globalist agendas that don't necessarily consider the local interests in the process. So therefore, it's really subversive even to our constitutional republic, separation of powers, and the residual sovereignty in our counties that are guaranteed to us in the Montana Constitution. It says emphatically that the people of Montana are guaranteed to a system of self-government and that the dignity of the individual is inviolable. And when you allow special interest foundations come in, and the American Prairie Reserve was spawned by the Nature Conservancy, World Wildlife Fund, and those are the big ones. I mean,
Yeah.
they're big, and they're moving a lot of that and pushing it forward. And so it's not easy. The odds always feels like the odds are against us, but
you're having better success now with your governor and attorney general there in Montana, correct?
yeah, with the American Prairie Reserve on the permitting process on these allotments that are taking place, from the county perspective, we've substantively submitted comment into the process every time it's been opened through the rulemaking process and the permitting process, and we did really excellent work in doing that. And we had a change of administration in the state with a governor and an attorney general that is really standing behind those resource-dependent counties, and they've actually entered into active litigation on the BLM approving some of these permits, and that's going through a federal appeals court through federal grazing appeals as we speak. So yeah, we do have, thankfully, an alignment from our leadership in the state that is supporting our rural resource-dependent counties.
Well, Nathan, what you're doing is very important. This is happening all over the Midwest and the West, and really all over the country. And as you pointed out, as we've written in the New American, around the world, in Sri Lanka, in Holland, in Germany, in France. And so it seems like many more people are becoming aware of this. Many of the farmers and ranchers and agricultural people who weren't familiar with this before are now seeing the writing on the wall and are beginning to understand this. So Keep up the good work. I'm sure you're getting a lot more reawakening amongst your fellow agricultural people.
Yeah, well, I guess that's one good thing about some of these things coming into a region is it kind of forces people who are otherwise sitting there not really engaging on the issues or understanding the broader issues in the world. Um, and that's what they didn't expect. Maybe they might not have expected that people would wake up and realize, we don't really want this in our counties, in our region, to supplant these ag industries and the customs, the cultures that have developed there over the years. And those are protected by law. So we're in the battle to protect those private property interests and make sure that our constituency on the ground is protected in the process, and our ag industry continues to serve as the main industry in Montana and feed the nation and feed people. So,
well, I know you have a lot of things that are going to be working into the courts, and you're working on educational efforts. So we look forward to getting updates from you in the future.
Yeah, much appreciated.
Good luck with all you're doing.